Good morning, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. I'm very sorry I cannot be there with you, but I'm glad I can present this work to you anyway in this way on distance. My name is Friederike Ziegler. I'm a senior scientist at RISE, Research Institutes of Sweden, where I coordinate and lead the contract work and research that we do related to seafood and sustainability assessment. And a few years back, I met Geneviève Desport from NAMMCO at the conference in Iceland, the World Seafood Congress. And we talked about food and sustainability assessment, the type of work that we do. And she was wondering, would it be possible to do something like this for seal and sealing and seal as a food source? And I said, well, I don't know a lot about how sealing is done and what kind of data that you could get, but of course, why not? It should be possible. So we started set up a small project, and Geneviève told me more about this, and I understood that the hunting activity in Greenland has been going down for a number of years, and at the same time the import of food, in particular pig and chicken products have increased mainly from Denmark, which is a major trade country and producer of also pig and chicken. And the question was, what are the sustainability implications of this dietary shift that is going on in Greenland? And so we said, well, we can try to apply the method that we use for these assessment of food supply chains from the production to the consumer. Is life cycle assessment, and normally it starts with a definition of goal and scope, and defining the product to be compared, and then specific method choices like how where are the system boundaries, what to include and what not to include. And followed by the life cycle inventory, that's data collection for the specific production. It's also matching with database data or sometimes literature data, so it often ends up being a mix of production-related data and statistics and literature data. And after that, these emissions are then translated into environmental impacts by established methods that we have available. Here, the example is greenhouse gas emissions, where all the greenhouse gases are using these factors for climate impact per kilogram are translated into the unit carbon dioxide equivalents. And there are similar methods for all the other impacts that are included in life cycle assessment. The next step is interpretation. That means analyzing results. What are the hotspots? Which inputs are most important? Evaluating if data quality is sufficient for those critical data points. And in some cases, maybe the conclusion is that the data is not sufficient, so we need to go back and try to identify more high quality data for some of these inputs. So that's why it's often described as this iterative process where the quality is improved and the effort is spent on the most important parts of the system. And the next or the final step that is sometimes forgotten is how the results are applied, and that is very often to identify improvement options within a supply chain. It can be to inform customers downstream in the supply chain, like either consumers or customers on a higher level. But it can also inform policy making related to the supply chain in terms of efficiency of the production. And for this case study or pilot study, we defined the functional unit as a kilogram of meat, so seal, pork, or poultry meat that had been delivered to NUK. So that was the common basis for comparison in this study. Then what did we do? Well, we started out looking up literature data for Danish pork and poultry production, and also aligned the method choices in these studies to the approach that we had taken. And we added, of course, the transport to NUK later, and made sure that it was comparable. Then we prepared a small survey that we sent to KNAK, the Hunters and Fishers organization in Greenland, and they translated and distributed it to their members. And we got 11 responses back from them, and so all our results and conclusions are based on these responses from the hunters. It's important to remember. We also contacted Greenlandic retailers and asked about their imports, the logistics about the food products that they sell, and temporal trends in increases in different products. We also collected import and hunting data from the Greenlandic authorities. We had the Ministry for Hunting and Fisheries was part of the project team, so they were very closely related. And we also learned a lot from reading a lot of NAMMCO reports on different sealing methods and seal populations, and a lot of different things that we could that were useful to understand the background. We then took the data that we got from the hunters and modeled it in the life cycle assessment software called SimaPro, where we then also extracted the data and matched it with all the background data that was needed for transports and energy production and so on. And we actually did not go to Greenland as part of this project. It was a small pilot project. It didn't go on for that long time. And honestly, I also think, given the language difficulties, I wonder if we would have gotten that much more out of it by going there. So I think the best way to undertake a study like this was to collaborate with the local organizations that already know the hunters well and have the trust and also can communicate more easily. Yes, now then to the results, and the first thing we noted was that there was quite a spread among the hunters, so we decided to instead of just presenting an average and a range, we modeled the best and the worst case to sort of show the range in that way. And you can also see that it's very dominated by the amount of fuel used. It's both the production and the combustion of the fuel, and that is basically determining the emissions of the seal. I should say that this is sealing. The hunters were all hunting using a boat or sometimes from the ice, but there was no netting involved in the responses that we got. Well, but then the question is, okay, so somewhere between almost 2 to almost 5 kilos, but how much is that? Doesn't tell you very much as a number in itself. But when we then line it up along with the pig pig meat, we can see that pig meat is considerably higher than, and this is the worst case from the previous slide for seal. So we continued assuming seal was the worst case and compared that with the other products. And you can see for pig that it's very dominated by production. So the shipping to Greenland is not very important in terms of emissions contribution. Yes. And if we also add poultry to this equation, which we did in a rather late stage of the work, you can see that poultry is more similar to the worst case seal case, and it's similar to pig in terms of that the production is what is important, and transport is a very small part of it. Sorry. We also found some literature data on minke whale, and since that was the only value that we have found for marine mammals at all, we included it in our discussion as a comparative value. But it seems that marine mammals in this perspective, they are at least performing as well or better than other animal products that we can see in from more typical livestock production chains. But then the issue is also that it's not only about greenhouse gas emissions. There are many other sustainability aspects, and they are perhaps equally important. They're not as easily to quantify. But so we decided instead to evaluate them based on literature and other sources, but in a more qualitative way to sort of indicate which of the systems is performing better or worse. And of course, all the agriculture related aspects here, land use, pesticide use, antibiotics use, is a big advantage of a wild animal like the seal. There are animal welfare issues very well known related to the pig and poultry production, and marine resources sustainability. There are no indications that any of the seals that are hunted for food in Greenland are overutilized. But in terms of poultry and pig, they are fed partly with fish meals and fish oil, and part of the fish meal and fish oils are not sustainably used. So that's why pig and poultry have a red mark here. And the only category actually where seal has a lower mark or than poultry and pig is for the risk of containing contaminants, because as we can see here, there is some advice against consuming old seals too often in the Greenlandic dietary advice. So yeah, that there are some trade-offs involved. Right. So 2 lessons learned and conclusions. Well, we think even though there is definitely a limited amount of data that has been going into this work, it is more of an inspiration to find out more than to see it as the absolute final result. So it should be seen more as a start than as a final conclusion about sealing versus other food. And as long as dietary advice is followed for Greenlanders, it is more sustainable to eat seal than importing pig. It's hard to draw any other conclusion than that. I can also say from my personal experience of talking and presenting this project in different circumstances that hunting of mammals for food in the sea is definitely much more controversial than on land, and that has been an interesting and thought-provoking experience to make, I think. It's also the definitions of what is actually tradition in a certain area and cultural has also been interesting to think about in this context, and a very different setting that is Greenland. We also conclude that, well, given that a lot of the decrease in hunting activity is due to the EU seal product ban, that it would be good and motivated to clearly specify its goals and the underlying motives and consequences clearly, because we think that there is a lot of misunderstanding around them. And also policy making related to the hunting and dietary advice in Greenland could be informed by this type of work. Well, and by that I say thank you. I welcome any kinds of questions in the, I think we have a short live session for questions, but you're also very welcome to send me an email and ask any questions that you have after the presentation, but also after reading the paper. And you can find it here by through this link or by simply searching the title. So thank you very much.